Superheroes hook up a lot. I mean, it might not be the first thing to come to mind when you think about what the life of a superhero is like, but hey, they're just like regular people too in some respects. And sometimes you've got to blow off steam by, well, you guys get the idea. Naturally, in their respective universes, plenty of heroes out there have had more than just one romantic partner over the years. So today we are taking a closer look at a specific group in the Marvel Universe, mutants, and counting down the top 10 superheroes who hooked up with a mutant. Starting us off in at number 10, WASP. Let's begin our list with one of the stranger hookups that we'll be discussing today, WASP and Magneto. Yup, that's a thing that happened. This went down in Secret Wars issue 3, the first Secret Wars, and it was only a one-night stand, but it is kinda creepy. Magneto makes a move on her and Janet is all like, wait, what? And then says no 3 times before he whips this trick out on her. I quote, "There was so little time, Janet," while practically rubbing his face up against hers. And then she eventually gives in by saying, "Oh, why not?" and then compliments his eyes. The whole thing is a little melodramatic, and needless to say, we're pretty okay with the fact that it didn't exceed that one-night stand. In at number 9, Crystal. Inhuman Princess Crystal and mutant speedster Quicksilver fell in love after she nurtured him back to health post-Sentinel attack. Now, this is when Quicksilver was still technically a mutant. He's a human mutate now after a retcon, but it counts. So the two got married and had a kid named Luna. Their wedding happened in Avengers issue 127 but was interrupted by Ultron, and then the two eventually officially tied the knot in Fantastic Four issue 150. The relationship went downhill from there though. Crystal cheated on him, and Quicksilver, who has a real bad temper, got abusive with her. He even shouted at her, I quote, "You and humans are nothing but a cult. You never had any room in your isolated world for a mutant," all while painfully gripping her wrist while she exclaims to him that he's hurting her. Dude, chill. The hell, man. Moving on to number 8, She-Hulk. So this number is kind of cheating because it involves Juggernaut, and he's not technically a mutant despite being Charles Xavier's stepbrother and also a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But this hookup is kind of the hookup of all hookups when it comes to comic books, so we decided to include it on our list and give Kane Marco an honorary mutant status for it. Talking She-Hulk and Juggernaut, guys! For starters, Jennifer Walters gets way too much slack for being promiscuous. Iron Man Tony Stark is also a major hoe and doesn't get nearly as much heat, which is something that was actually brought up in the comics when those two hooked up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about She-Hulk's other hookups, but rather her hookup with a particular, not actually a mutant, that made shockwaves, possibly literally too, after it happened. Look at that bedroom damage! God! I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, those repairs do not look cheap. Anyway, that is a hookup, or at least a superhero hookup. This went down in Juggernaut issue 2. Now all these days this hookup has been kind of retconned. It was an alternate reality version of She-Hulk. It's still one that has managed to remain in our collective memories. Just why it gets a spot on this list too. Moving on to number 7, Spider-Man. While Peter Parker's most iconic romantic pairings are Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, the character has dated outside of the human race too. Once upon a time, Parker dated Marrow, aka Sarah Rushman, a mutant capable of growing skeletal structures outside of her body. Essentially, bones would painfully erect themselves outside of her skin, which she could use as a weapon, body armor, shields, you name it. Marrow had an awkward story arc where she was brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and believed that she was a student at Empire State University. There, she developed a crush on Parker, who was working there as a lecturer. Eventually, she discovered that he was Spider-Man, and the relationship fell apart after a few dates, with Marrow eventually being rid of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s influence. Well, that was not really a good time for Marrow in general. Up next at 6, Black Panther. Black Panther and Mutant Storm have had one of the most iconic and endearing relationships in Marvel's panels. T'Challa and Ororo have had a long-winded history together. They've been into each other since they were kids, and carried affection around in their hearts for one another for years and years. Then back in 2006, they actually tied the knot in a wedding that interrupted and paused the Civil War. Eventually, despite their chemistry together, T'Challa annulled their marriage because he felt that Storm had betrayed him by siding with the X-Men during AVX, so. In at number 5, Namor. Namor has hooked up with a mutant before, and that mutant's name is Emma Frost. I mean, I kinda get it. He's attractive in that whole arrogant King of Atlantis way, right? Maybe? Despite him looking like an aging genie going through a midlife crisis the first time that we're led to assume that they met, the two had a previous history together, when Namor had been invited to the Hellfire Club by Sebastian Shaw. Namor was not interested in the Hellfire Club though. He sure as hell was interested in Emma. She seduced him, and after the fact, Shaw had their hookup wiped from Emma's memory. The sexual chemistry between the two has been palpable ever since. Speaking of Emma Frost though, that brings us to our next number. In at number 4, Iron Man. Yes, Iron Man and Emma Frost. Of course! course Tony Stark has hooked up with at least one mutant, and of course it was Emma Frost. The two of them are undoubtedly tens, and I think we'd be insulted if they hadn't have hooked up in the past. While unfortunately we never got to see that hookup happen on panel, it is referred to in Civil War issue 3 while Tony visits Emma in Westchester. Tony asks her, I quote, "Does Cyclops know about that little arrangement we used to have when neither of us were dating?" To which Emma responds, "Cyclops knows everything, Tony. He can't keep secrets from my telepathic mind, so it's only fair that I don't keep anything from him." Friends with benefits, people. Moving on. In at number 3, HULKLING. Young Avengers HULKLING Teddy Altman and Wiccan Billy Kaplan are one of the best teen couples in comics currently, or young adult rather. HULKLING is a Kree-Skrull hybrid and Wiccan is a mutant and a mage. The latter is the reincarnated son of Scarlet Witch and the former is the son of the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. Now Teddy's heritage is a bit clearer. The source of Billy's powers, though, are a bit unclear despite his powers being triggered when Scarlet Witch healed him. Now it is presumed he is a mutant. Despite this, the relationship between the two is pretty darn wonderful. Teddy and Billy have managed to make it through thick and thin and have become a fan favorite ship to a larger audience than just LGBTQ readers. They're also engaged, so that's exciting, and have a really sweet apartment in downtown Manhattan. Like, how dope is that? Moving on to number 2, Star-Lord. While Colossus might be endgame for Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat had a pretty intense relationship with Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, not too long ago. One of the more recent memorable pairings, the two met after Kitty found herself in space when the young time-displaced version of Jean Grey had been put on trial by the Shi'ar Empire. It started as a long-distance relationship, but eventually she joined the Guardians of the Galaxy and he proposed to her. Many people adored them for how real and relatable the romance felt, but unfortunately it did not last, with Kitty calling off the engagement and the relationship itself after the events of Civil War II. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Squirrel Girl. In New Avengers Volume 2 Issue 7, Squirrel Girl Doreen Green becomes the nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter, but in doing so, she comes face to face with another member of the team, a past lover of hers, Wolverine. That's where we learn that the two had a previous romantic rendezvous. They awkwardly compliment each other on how good they both look, and then there's a bit of a sparring match between them where Wolverine gets his butt handed to him. No claws involved in the sparring, might I add though. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for those of you less curious, that is all we learned about their romantic past together. I mean, can you blame us for being curious? Alright, there we have it, friends. What other characters can you think of that have hooked up with a mutant who are not a mutant? That's the parameters that we're playing with here. If you guys can think of some, be sure to give us a shout in those comments below and let us know what's on your brains. In the meantime, thank you for watching. If you dug this video, hit that like button, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd. I will catch you all in the next video. That could have been a very bad... Before he whips it out. He's like, I'm not just the master of magnetism. Exceptions, aren't they fun? There, she just about. Gosh darn. I should just read what I wrote. And have a really sweet apartment in downtown Manhattan. Apartment envy. I'm like only thinking about apartments these days. It's like seeped into my work.